Hey everybody, Card Dreamer here, coming at you on behalf of D Class Derailed. And man, do I have a loaded topic for you guys today. So, you all, as a lot of you may know, I'm big into comic books and especially the DC side of things. And I've made it no secret that Superman is my favorite hero, period. And there's been a lot of ups and downs with the character, with the comics in general, and unfortunately, I had to stop following comics for a few years. I was collecting them hardcore while I was in school and high school and all. I was able to read a decent amount in the early 2000s, but then I wasn't able to keep up. It's just comics got too expensive to keep up with everything that I wanted to read. And somewhere along the line, they introduced the New 52, which basically got rid of everything that I knew. It was a complete reboot. Now, supposedly, the history of the Green Lantern Corps was supposed to be kept the same. Nothing was supposed to be erased there. And they said the same with Batman, but they didn't. They could say it all they want. The if his history kept intact, then he should remember things. So it to me, it's not. It wasn't. Batman didn't count. Green Lanterns could kind of get away with it because they deal with things on a galactic scale. They weren't even in the universe for a while, I think, during the reboot. So it's kind of like they get a free pass, and they I don't I really don't know if they acknowledge that things used to be different or not. But anyway, so the New 52 came along, and I just was not a fan of all the things that they were doing. The New 52 was a chance for DC to try and reinvent itself, do different things, go against the grain, so to speak. They wanted to really shake the foundation and try new things, and I'm not against that. There's just a right and a wrong way to do it. To me, there's no matter what you want to change and do, there's certain fundamentals with a character you can't change. Doing so makes it no longer the character. And I couldn't I really just couldn't keep doing it. But and spoil alerts, by the way. I'm gonna put that right now before I really get into the things that they did change. Okay. And so you had things such as Bruce was considered dead, I guess, for lack of I don't know exactly what was going on with that storyline, but Bruce Wayne was dead and Commissioner Gordon actually became the new Batman. Superman was dating Wonder Woman and not Lois Lane. Superman had his secret identity revealed to the world by Lois, and he was depowered for the longest time, like maybe 20% of his power. He wore and he wore jeans and a t-shirt for a lot of it. So and he had like a buzz cut hair, and it didn't work for me. A lot of things just didn't work. So to give a brief history of the comic books, you have to understand there's a rich history with DC, and DC's not adverse, nor Marvel for that matter. And possibly other company brands as well. I don't know. I haven't followed them as much. I know Marvel and DC, they've had their share of reboots, universal reboots. DC's most famous one is Crisis on Infinite Earths. Then they did Infinite Crisis. Actually, no, I'm sorry. They did Crisis on Infinite Earths, 0 Hour, then Infinite Crisis, then Final Crisis. So they're not adverse to rebooting the universe, the multiverse, and so forth. But the thing is, there were certain things that even though they rebooted, things carried over, or they were subtle changes, or there were things just made to fix certain continuity issues, or what have you. The Superman that most people know or knew was actually the second Superman. The first one was from the original Earth 2, and he aged, and eventually he lasted a long time. He was supposedly thought to have died in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And you find out he survived, and he died in Infinite Crisis. And it was he was a hero through and through, and you can't say anything. But the other Superman that we knew was actually the second one. He who did appear in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he survived. I mean, that particular Superman survived every reboot. And I believe it was in Infinite Crisis. He actually got his memory. He got the memory of pre-crisis back. So there's a rich history with this character. Arguably, potentially, the biggest history. Because even though other characters may have survived, they didn't remember it. I don't know if everybody was let in on it. I think obviously they were let in that there was a previous thing, but I don't know if they were. Oh, I don't think they were all given memories back. I don't know. But Superman was given his memories back, and that gave so much history to draw on for this character, so much work that meant it got to live on through him. Whether no matter how many times they rebooted, certain things may no longer exist, or what, but they existed through him because he was there for it, and they didn't erase that. So it was really kind of cool that they kept that history in some way, even though it was rebooted. It it still got to linger, and things still eventually got brought forth and so forth. It was just neat and really done well that throughout time his legacy got to stay the way it was. No matter while the world or multiverse changed around him, he got to stay connected to his past, for lack of a better way to put it. And then you fast forward to the New 52, and it wasn't a crisis thing. It wasn't a galactic scale threat. So for those who don't know, Flash had a storyline called Flashpoint. And the New 52 stemmed from this. So, and basically, Flash goes back in time and saves his mother from dying, which completely screws up everything. It has a butterfly effect. Huge, huge, huge deal into Flash's life. Like he basically no longer becomes Flash. Everything is topsy turvy. Superman was held prisoner by the military since the day he landed. Never became Superman. Uh, Wonder Woman and the Amazons was at war with Aquaman and Atlantis. Um, it just Bruce Wayne died as a boy instead of his parents in the alley. His mother becomes Joker because she can't handle the stress of it, and Thomas Wayne becomes this dark, brutal Batman. So I mean, there is a lot, like huge, drastically changes, and he tries to put things right, but the New 52 is created, so there are still things different. They're kind of back at the beginning of things. Superman's costume's completely different now. Everybody has their outfits have this armored look to it. And it just I can handle kind of rebooting thing, but not the way they did. I just didn't get into it from what I. It just isn't for me. The only thing that really wasn't bugging me was interesting enough exploring the Superman Wonder Woman relationship. That didn't bother me, even though we all know like his love is Lois Lane. That should have. It didn't bother me exploring because it's an idea they've toyed with in the past before. So it wasn't like that was a big, huge new thing. That's something they've toyed with before. This is just the first time they really got to act it out. And it didn't bother me. But suffice it to say, the new 52 wasn't doing that well. A lot of people were complaining. It just wasn't their characters. Even though some things may have worked, the Green Lantern stuff actually was still good. Like, it was really good. That was the only part of the new 52 I was really liking. And so, in order for. It's so hard to. I know I'm pausing a lot, and it's just so hard to get everything coherent together because there's really so much that intertwines with where I'm actually going. I haven't even began to talk about why I'm so upset, like, or what the main discussion is. I know you're like, oh my gosh, you're 11 minutes in, get to it. But you really need to understand the background. But you know what I should say with the title. So really, the title of discussion is how DC's Rebirth storyline of specifically Superman Reborn that ruined that to me just has ruined DC Comics since then. But I want to give you the history. And so the new 52 was not that great. It wasn't doing very well other than the Green Lantern stuff, in my opinion. Wally West wasn't the red hair ginger we knew from the pre 52. He was a new one. And people really wanted the old because people love the original Wally West, who took over for Barry Allen when he was thought to have died in Crisis on Infinite Earths. He was equally known as the Flash just as much as Barry Allen. But so they decided that they were going to do some interesting things. They were leading up to a storyline called Rebirth. It was going to be a soft reboot of the New 52 where they were going to try to combine elements from the pre-52 and the New 52. And they started with a comic series called Lois and Clark. And let me tell you something. I love this series, and I was so disappointed that they canceled it when they did, because it's an unresolved storyline that'll never get finished now. But it lasted for 12 issues, and it was so good, so good. So they did another storyline prior to Rebirth called Convergence, which wasn't handled very well. A lot of people were disappointed with it. But basically, there was a villain, and over top of him was a level of Brainiac that was way beyond anything we'd ever seen. But basically, Brainiac had kept slithers of all these timelines, post crisis, post 52, all of these. He kept slithers of all these different realities that have come and gone, even Convergence timeline. And things got mixed up. Like, everybody was crossing over, everybody was mixing. And some of them didn't make sense because, again, keep in mind the Superman that we knew for so many decades was the same one from pre-crisis. So they actually had a slither of the pre-crisis timeline, which kind of doesn't make sense because post-crisis Superman was there too. So it's kind of like, how do you have both when they're actually the same being? But what it would be that as it may. Um, there's this big contest basically that the villain wanted to pin them all together or against each other. In that storyline, Pre-52 Superman, the one that most people, the world knew, the one who died by Doomsday, one who did end up marrying Lois Lane. Lois was pregnant, and Thomas Wayne from the Flashpoint era helped Lois give birth to their son, Jonathan. So, and it kind of ends with certain beings going off to find their way, and then and then there was a new 52. And so fast forward to again to the Rebirth storyline. And this was DC's way of trying to slowly give readers this was trying to please everybody when you know you can't do that. But this was trying to find a happy middle ground. So Rebirth was supposed to be start of a bigger story arc that actually just wrapped up not that long ago. Rebirth, leading up to Rebirth, they decided that they were going to, because sales weren't that great. I'm jumping all over the place. Oh my gosh, because they're all like going on almost simultaneously. So they introduced a storyline, like I mentioned, or a comic line called Lois and Clark. That dealt with the pre-52 Superman in the new 52 world. It was pre-52 Superman, his wife Lois, and their son Jonathan. And you find out that at the end of Convergence, Brainiac let them know, hey, your reality doesn't exist anymore, but I can send you wherever else you want to go. And they chose to go to the main timeline, which was the New 52. And they lived there in secret. And it was so cool because it opens up with pre-52 Superman in outfit, ready to join a battle against Darkseid, who he's watching the new 52's version of what comes together to be the Justice League fight him for the first time, who were unfamiliar with Darkseid. It was their first meeting, whereas new 50 or pre-52 Superman knows all about it. I mean, it's really really cool to see him like so close to jumping in and like, and I could take, because he has all this knowledge from his timeline. But it ends up basically him living in secret, trying to hide, to still be a Superman behind the scenes, while never interacting with his new 52 counterpart. Well, unfortunately, that storyline gets canceled, and but it's that's okay, because it kind of, so they decided they were going to kill the new 52 Superman. They didn't want to continue to have multiple Supermans, and they do. And eventually, Pre and New 52 do meet up, not for too long. You know, they don't have these big epic battles. There is an overall epic battle going on, but long story short, New 52 Superman dies, and the Pre 52 Superman takes over. He comes back as Superman, and he does fill Wonder Woman and Batman in on the truth. And this is where I got back between Lois and Clark and what they did here. This is how I got back into DC. This is where they drew in my love again, cuz now I'm getting two different worlds. And this is what I loved, right? You have all this rich history with the pre-52 Superman. You have all his history, all his knowledge. He's acting on it. Now, obviously, there are differences in this world in the New 52. There are some things that never came to pass. Certain people are good, that were bad. Some people were bad that were good. Like, it's all some of it's topsy turvy to him. And that's what I love, is that he's got to make his way now in this new 52. He's got to be the Superman that the world needs, but he's not the one they know. And how do you take on that role? How do you step into the shoes of kind of yourself, but yet there's a whole different standard. And let's be real. No one's going to measure up to the standard of the pre-52 Superman. I mean, he's the bar. The new 52 Superman never had the chance, nor would he ever rise to meet the feats of pre-52. As much as you may like or dislike it, I'm not knocking it per se. I'm just saying there's just too much of a history. And they started out with, they had potential here. This is what blew my mind, because I love the fact that they were dealing with some of it. And there was some of it was done in a silly manner, which I absolutely loved. Like there was one panel, I forget what, if it was a mainstream like Action Comics or Superman, or if it was I forget which one it was, but there was one that shows Batman and Wonder Woman were over for dinner over at Superman's home, and Superman's telling him stories of his, from his universe, from his time, and he was telling Batman of the time. And this is an old comic reference where Batman, in order to, Robin was in trouble, and I believe it was Dick Grayson Robin. He was being pursued by a villain, and in order to take focus off of Robin, that Batman dressed up in a rainbow colored outfit just to draw attention to himself. And Superman was telling him that story, and Batman, New 52's Batman is like, no, I would never. No, no. Just couldn't believe it. It was funny. It was great. But then there was other dynamics that I really, that didn't play out as long as they should have, if at all. There might, one issue was addressed within a single panel, couple of panels, and that's if that was bad. And it's part of a bigger problem. It's like, it almost seems like comic books are afraid to get deep. That they're afraid to actually have a meaningful story that touches on social aspects, or psychology or mental aspect. They feel like comic books always have to be this big action packed thing, and they to tell a good story, and don't. They don't. I don't get it. Look at storylines like A Funeral for a Friend after Superman died. It was Superman's comics and storylines about the world dealing with the loss. Superman's not in it except for as a dead body. And it was such an emotional, powerful thing. You can tell good, deep stories, even when the character's not there, about the character. Because as again with Funeral for a Friend, you're telling about what that character means to that world. You have a chance of doing things just as deep here now. For instance, there was an issue when the original Doomsday comes back, which is really cool. I wish they would have followed through a little more on that, but that was cool. Where Lois, Superman's Lois, meets up with Wonder Woman, and during that fight, and she's like, I know this can be awkward." She's addressing the fact that she understands that pre-52 Superman looks like new 52 Superman, and it's reminding Wonder Woman of the relationship she lost, that love she's lost. And how must that feel? You lost such an amazing love, because they had those two close. New 52 Superman died in Wonder Woman's arms. Some of his dying words were how lucky he was to have her, to have been able to love her. I mean, how that was good. That was good. So how deep and how much must that have felt to her to have to now I mean, think about this. Think about what that means. And I'm going to tell you how the comic resolved this before I tell you what it should have meant. She just tells Lois, "No, I'm okay. I feel like this is the right thing. Everything's right in the way it should be." This is pretty much all it's said, and it's done. The issue is resolved. What? What? No. No, see, I don't. Now I agree that's where the ultimately should have ended up, but not that quick, not that way. This is a woman who had her love die in her arms, going through one major event after another, the ups and downs of everything that Superman had to deal with, and it's ripped from her before they ever really get a chance. It seems like before they ever really got a chance. And now you have this new guy for her who looks who it for in every sense that counts in every way that matters is Superman. I mean, it is. It's the pre-52 Superman. But it looks, sounds, and act. I mean, this is her. It's basically for her. It should have been like, this is my Superman. So why isn't it my Superman? It's got to be a daily reminder that hers is gone. How does she work in a team, live in a world where Superman is here but not hers anymore? It's where it's literally not the same man, but yet it is. It's got to be so hard that I can't even wrap my brain after like dealing with something like that. It's kind of like the only way I could possibly correlate that to a real world scenario is like if you're dating somebody and they're actually part of identical twins and they have a twin, but yours dies, but the twin lives on. Like, how could you possibly be friends? Not that it's any of their fault, but how could you be friends with the twin without being reminded of the actual person you were with isn't there anymore? Like, that's the only way I can equate it. So I feel like this could have been a real interesting dynamic for them to explore, and they did not explore it. But it was there. So there was potential in all these different assets. There's the Lex Luthor was a good guy in the New 52 for a while and friends with New 52 Superman. Whereas Pre-52 Superman has the very, very opposite experience with him. So there was a dynamic there. There were just all these amazing things. They did a line called Multiplicity where Superman were being hunted across the New 52 multiverse, and they get to this one, and they're like, "We don't know who you are. You're not the Superman that's supposed to be in this world." It was so cool for him. They kept setting up in this thing like, "You're here, but you don't. You're here, but you don't belong. You're in a universe, a part of a multiverse that you were not supposed to be a part of." And that is so neat. And I feel like they could have played on that on such a grand scale. What could they do? What does it mean for somebody whose own reality isn't even there to go back to, and he's sitting and he's here and arguably maybe more powerful than the previous one? Like, just all this potential. He's there and shouldn't be. What does that mean consequence wise on a cosmic level? I'm just saying it could have been great. And that potential always could have lied there. But then they did, and this is the focus of the conversation and discussion. And I'm sorry it's taken a half hour to get there, but you really needed that background. I think you need to understand like the potential was there again to be good. They even brought back OG Gingerhead Wally West from pre-crisis, or excuse me, from pre-52. They brought him back and he remembers everything. And he thought he was alone. And Pre-52 Superman goes to meet up with him and is like, "Hey, I just want you to know, I remember. I was there. That it was me. I'm that Superman. You're not alone." How touching is that? It gives them some kind of bond like you're not alone. Like, there is a connection. You and me can we'll carry that together now. That burden, those memories, we got that. That is so cool. I love that. And there's potential to keep going with that too. But then you get to Superman Reborn. And in comes Mixie, that imp from the fifth dimension. And I was okay with the storyline up into the final resolution. That's what drives me so bonkers. So apparently and they've hinted about it. There's this being called Mr. Oz. How unoriginal, but you know, it worked. Um, who was kind of manipulating things for a bigger threat coming, so to speak. And he was holding Mixie captive for a while, who was upset that Superman never rescued him. Now remember, Mixie knows Pre52 Superman. This is that Mixie. So he wants to get revenge and starts parading around as Clark Kent. And eventually, let's just say eventually there's a showdown. And Jonathan Kent's wrapped into this as well. Who finds out he is eventually told prior to this. This is what I'll get that he's told he finds out in the Lois and Clark comic that they're from an alternate Earth that doesn't exist anymore. That his dad is Superman from just they're from a different Earth, not the New 52 one. Okay, so he knows, but yet this storyline conveniently makes him forget that. So Mixie, something happens and Pre52 Lois and Clark disappears and in comes back. He starts messing with Jonathan's perception, whatever, and brings back New 52 Lois and Clark, Lois and Superman. And Jonathan doesn't really notice the costumes different, and they're not remembering them. And Jonathan's like, "But mom, dad, what's going on? Why don't you remember me anymore?" And it should have dawned on him between looking everything and understanding what's going on. And oh, that's right, this is the Superman of this world. It should have clicked and it didn't. That kind of bugged me, but I can let that slide. And what ends up happening is Mixie merges in order to help, quote unquote, help face this upcoming threat. He's trying to argue that Superman was torn in two, and that the the I don't know what he's kind of referring to. He's just saying he was split in two, and that's why he's weakened and he needs to be back at full power. So he ends up merging Pre52 and New 52 into one being, which ends up altering reality as far as Superman's personal history there on the New 52 Earth, which people are going to remember him always being there, blah blah blah, and it makes no sense. It cannot work that way. It can't. For it, especially since there are events that are unaffected by it. For instance, Wally West had the talk with Superman saying, "Hey, I remember Pre52." That Wally West still exists, so how can he? It doesn't make sense. It undoes a lot of the things from the Lois and Clark comic. And basically, as of now, like none of that is even addressed. The fact that he's from the Pre52, Pre52 era, and all they do is just do what they want, and they acknowledge what they want and don't acknowledge what they want, and it's just a big mess. It Wally West doesn't make sense now in that conversation, and the whole dating with Wonder Woman, like it just, I guess that just never happened. Period. But yet they're trying to keep the continuity of. They're trying to reference events from both timelines, and you can't have both. Either one happened or it didn't happen, but they contradict each other a lot. So it really bothers me is that now all of DC is a complete mess. None of it making any coherent sense, or constantly jumping back and forth in time and between the different series, trying to fill in little gaps, but nothing. But they're just refusing to address the bigger issue and the mess that one Superman storyline completely messes up so many different events for so many different characters because he's so integral. And what's even more is that the whole purpose of doing it, honestly, was the preparation for what Mr. Oz was talking about, which happened to be the storyline of Doomsday Clock, which was bringing in Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen. That storyline's ending did not require Superman to be at full strength. And not that I understand why he was weakened, because it seemed to me when he took over for the new 52 Superman, he got what little bit of powers he was missing back. Like there, and actually, Swamp Thing helped him to do that too. I believe that had to do with the Swamp, one of the appearances of Swamp Thing in the comics. So, to really, the whole point of this discussion was just to talk about how, with one storyline, DC managed to take something that was on that could have still been good if they had bothered to follow through and get deep for a while, and with one storyline completely ruined it, because then they undid the new 52 Superman, they undid pre-52 Superman. Reality's changed, he doesn't have memories of anything. It's just weird. He's got memories of this new reality of his own personal history that Mixie created, and it's I don't like it. I guess to me it feels like a betrayal, because they completely took away any lasting remnant of what was the Superman I knew and love. And that's what hurts the most. They took away the longest running character they had, so to speak. The longest running character that with that history, with continuous history in some way. Now that history doesn't exist. It just I don't, not to say that they still don't have some good storylines going on, but they don't even explain a lot of things. So Superman changed his costume. Where pre 52 Superman didn't go back to his old costume. He changed it to fit in with this new world, and it does somewhat pay tribute to the new 52 Superman. He changed it. And then when after the Superman Reborn and once Superman 1000 happened, or Action Comics 1000 happened, he's in his classic outfit, no explanation. He just things are kind of back to a status quo pre 52 style that make no sense, because there's no explanation what led up to any of it. It's like DC just said, "Screw it. We messed up, so just see how bad we can do it." But that's just my opinion. And I know this will seem like a tirade. Maybe it was a little unorganized, but I'm very passionate about this, and I hope that at least shows. And if anybody has read these comics, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I would totally love to hear what you guys think. If any of you have read the comics, what you thought of the storyline, how they handled things. Does this make you interested to go back and find out more information, or are you kind of like, no, 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 I don't even want to bother? I'd love to hear you guys' opinions. So please leave your comments down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave me a message on Anchor if you're listening to this through the podcast. And I appreciate all your time. Thank you all for listening. And again, till next time, stay evil.